Good evening. From Chicago, I'm Charles Brown, Portfolio Manager with CB3 Financial Group, and this is CB3 on Today's Markets. Thank you for joining us. This is our fourth episode. We've got a lot of new people, and so I usually take the first 2 to 3 minutes just to talk to you while we wait for folks to join us. There are no handouts tonight, so if you've been with us the past 3 weeks, I'm not using handouts. I'm just going to talk to you directly. If you're new, though, this program is designed for anyone who has an interest in the market, specifically what's going on now with this global pandemic. So I want to remind you, as I've done the first 3 weeks, that adversity is inevitable. Misery is a choice, and we choose not to be miserable here at CB3 Financial Group. We're here to bring you honesty. We're here to bring you the markets as we see it. I am a portfolio manager, as I said earlier. We make actual trades in accounts for our group of clients, including our own personal assets. My wife and family have a 7-figure commitment to our investment programs, so we're not just hypothesizing on what we would like to invest. We are invested in what we talk about tonight. So we're glad you're here with us. The most recent fact that I have on this pandemic is that it's set to peak in the United States on April 16th. So we will see. I'm going to wait just another minute and a half for people to sign on. We're using a slightly different software tonight. So what I'm going to do is send you a poll. Okay, I'm going to send you this first question, and I'd like to get your input. On some of these questions I've got for you while we're waiting for people to log on. So what's your biggest anxiety? Feel free to give us your reply. Good evening, Tom. Glad you're with us. Good evening, Thomas. Glad you're with us. We got a Tom and a Thomas. So what's your biggest anxiety here? Okay. I'll leave it up there for a few more moments. I've got 2 more, and then I'll start the presentation. Tonight, for the first time, we're dividing the program into 4 pieces. First module is called Corona America, and then the U.S. economic data, and then investments in CB3 programs, and then in-progress ideas on new things that I'm thinking about for our investments. The feedback we've gotten over the last 3 weeks is that you guys want to know how your investments are tracking, what I'm doing to affect your programs that you're invested in. For those of you that are not clients and just are here for the data, we're glad you're here. I'm covering that in the first 2 sections, but you're welcome to stay for the whole presentation, okay? Welcome to stay. So let me put up the second of the questions here. How do you feel your local area is responding to the pandemic? It's different all across America, and I would be interested in seeing what your response is to that. Those of you that would like to reply, that would be great. Either very good or pretty good or not so good. And of course, this is different throughout the world as well. Okay, we'll leave that up there for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation, and then we'll come back to this. So we are in right now a medical crisis that has caused an economic crisis, and it could become a financial crisis. Right now it's not yet, and that's mostly because the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are backstopping the economy, which is rapidly failing. Hi, Alice. Thanks for joining. Okay. So we at CB3 want to make observations and not predictions. Observations and not predictions. One of the things I've noticed are the dollars that are being thrown at this pandemic. The top of the list, as you might suspect, are Bill and Melinda Gates have donated in excess of $100 million just in the last 3 weeks. That's $1/10 of $1 billion. That's a lot of money towards solving this great crisis. The latest numbers, and again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because you can get Corona America, that's my word, information elsewhere, but we passed 1 million cases in the world, and the deaths in the U.S. Are right at 20,000, okay? individually around the world, it's over 50,000. We had new cases of about 26,000, which was actually down yesterday versus Tuesday. So, as I said very early on, I don't think the apex is going to hit for another couple weeks. April 16th is currently what we're expecting on that. It's hard to believe this, but the best data that I can get from the sources that I track is that 1/3 of this planet is now under some form of behavior restriction. And by behavior restriction, I mean you can't go do the things that you want to do. Either it's highly suggested, or literally in New York, and some places of New Jersey, it's literally an arrestable offense. And that's simply because the government has decided that the pandemic, for the time being, trumps our rights and civil liberties. Hasn't happened in my lifetime, this sort of event. Now, this is a news item that many people have not seen. There was a soccer match in Italy, and apparently 40,000 fans gathered on February 19th, long before the word social distancing was popular. 3,000 fans came from Spain to watch this. 2 weeks later, the town of Bergamo, Italy, was at the heart of that country's outbreak. And then soon after that, Valencia, Spain, had more than 2,600 people infected. So when you see those two European countries are the worst two countries, that's why. Why the media hasn't picked up on this, I don't know. And you can't really compare the rapid acceleration in the U.S. because we didn't have a singular event like that which caused the outbreak, with the possible exception of Mardi Gras in New Orleans that could have caused it. So I'm going to put up the next question just to kind of keep things rolling along. Is this mandated social distancing helpful? You'll see that in the chat there. Okay. So what they know from Italy is that 70% of the deaths are attributed to men. So this is a 70% men, 30% women death rate, and that is consistent with what we're seeing here in the United States. So men, I would be one of those, and those of you watching are certainly more at risk than women are, and so higher precaution levels are needed for us, and I think that's interesting statistic for sure. So the White House 2 days ago in their daily press conference announced that they're expecting between 100 and 250,000 deaths from this pandemic. Had they not instituted social distancing and some other measures, but mainly the social distancing, that could have skyrocketed to 1.5 to 2.2 million, which is still less than the Spanish flu from 1918, 102 years ago. But the sobering part is that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, that you keep hearing about in the news, has asked the Pentagon for 100,000 body bags. Now, this sounds like, you know, a nuclear event or something, but this is supposed to peak in this country at April 16th. So we'll see if the data starts going backwards, and that's what we want at that time as far as the number of new cases and the number of deaths. But even with the social distancing that we're doing, this is a very, very, very serious pandemic. Now, from last week, these are some questions that I had not quite responded to yet. So last week's question, I think this was from Hossein. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine are used to treat malaria and arthritis. They've been approved for emergency use only for COVID-19. Avigan, which is currently used in Japan only for influenza, also can be used pending an FDA approval for general use, but it can be used for emergency use. And remdesivir, which is used for Ebola, the World Health Organization has said that it recommends this for emergency use only. Obviously, there's no really preferred treatment for COVID-19, and that's why we're waiting for companies to come up with that. There are no other treatments on the market. Also had a question last week, how about looking into items to maybe stop the curve or to flatten the curve, like vitamin A, rich foods, etc. It's important that you guys know that there are no supplements or diets or other lifestyle modifications other than social distancing and proper hygiene. Obviously, washing hands, using hand sanitizer that can protect you from COVID-19. Obviously, wearing the masks are a big deal. But one thing that I'm seeing, and I'm using this myself now just the last week or two, is zinc. Zinc boosts immunity, the immune system in the human body, and keeps various toxins from forming within our respiratory system. So I think zinc it's definitely something that you want to look into to maybe add to your diet. Bloomberg reports that U.S. intelligence has concluded that China has been underreporting deaths throughout their country. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I bet it doesn't surprise you either. And there are 11 U.S. companies, 11, including GM and Ford, that are now making ventilators. So we have gone from literally being ventilator starved in this country to now ramping up to those really high-risk areas like New York, New Jersey, New Orleans that need these ventilators. And I think that's a testimony to American industrial ingenuity, but they're able to ramp up that quickly. So what's the future? Well, I think cost is not going to be a driving factor for health anymore, and having 95% of our pharmaceutical needs being produced overseas will stop by the third quarter of this year, meaning the end of September. I don't think the U.S. is ever going to allow themselves to be this much in a risk position where so many of their pharmaceuticals are produced in China or other countries. You probably have seen in the news that the New England Patriots jet was taken over to China to pick up 1 million of those masks. I mean, that's crazy. The state of Massachusetts had no plane available that could handle these masks. China only allowed the jet on the ground for 3 hours, and they did it apparently in 2 hours and 57 minutes. At least that's the news that I'm seeing. But we shouldn't be in that position. So there are a lot of medical and overall health behavioral changes that are going to happen, I'm certain, when all this is said and done. Made in America will no longer be a slogan. In my opinion, it's going to be a congressional mandate. Let me say that again. Made in America will no longer just be a slogan. I think you're going to see that this is going to be a congressional mandate for many industries. Many industries. Okay, so that's the end of my first module. I want to pause in case you guys have any specific questions, all right? Okay. My next section is the stock market, so I'm going to send you the next poll, okay? When do you think the market will recover? Let me see if I've got any questions here. Okay. I'm just checking my stream. We're using a slightly different software this time, newer software from Facebook. So you guys got that poll up there? When do you think the stock market will recover? All right, while you're answering that, let me move on here. So on March 31st, just a couple days ago, we closed out the worst quarter since 2008. In fact, the fourth quarter of 2008 was worse than this quarter, but this was the worst first quarter in a long, long time, as in 50 years. So the first quarter is usually one of the strongest of the year, and it was headed to be that way until this pandemic broke out and changed that trajectory. Last week I talked about initial claims for unemployment. That's published every Thursday, and it was 3.3 million. Yesterday, should I say today, the initial claims for this week were 6.6 million. Now this is a report normally where we see 200 to 225,000 claims. That's it. 200 to 225,000 claims, and we are at 6.6 million. That's a staggering, staggering number. The prior record was just the previous week, obviously, but before that, we've just never had anything like this, even in the Great Depression. There are some bright spots, and I want to cover this. When I say bright, that doesn't mean things are going great. What that means is they're not as bad. So February construction spending, minus 1.3% versus expected of up 0.5. Well, that's not as bad as expected. March ISM 49.1, versus 50.1. Again, not as bad as expected. I've seen estimates for the world's largest economy, that would be us, to shrink by an annualized 24% in the second quarter. But the earlier estimate that I saw last week was 34%. So I think that's to some reason why the market has recovered today. Even as bad as this data was, the market is basically saying, look, we already saw that. We saw that, a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, that's like 10 days, okay? Unemployment rate to soar by 15% by mid-year, but down from a forecast of 18%. Now, we haven't had 15% unemployment in my lifetime. You have to go back to the Great Depression. But remember, that was an annualized number. An annualized number. We all know that this virus is going to stop at some point, and when it does, the economy is going to jumpstart. In fact, my estimates for the fourth quarter, that's why I asked this, when do you think the stock market's going to recover? Because my estimates for the fourth quarter, that would be October to December in the quiz there, is that we're going to see GDP expanding by 18 to 19% in one quarter because of what I'm calling pent-up demand. So even if the second and possibly a good chunk of the third are negative, I think the fourth is going to be really strong. Consumer confidence, which is so important because, as you guys know that have followed me for a while, consumer confidence is important because 70% of GDP is consumer spending. And if consumers are not feeling great, they're not going to spend. Well, that dropped to 120. And yes, it's the lowest reading since July of 2017, but that was expected to drop to 105. All right, so to drop from 130, I think, to 120 instead of 105, again, not as bad. You're hearing a lot of that in this report tonight, that it's just not as bad. The key takeaway is that the market has factored in a lot of this. The ADP employment report, which comes out the Wednesday before the first Friday of the month, so the biggest report we have every month is the first Friday, which happens to be tomorrow. So I'm going to comment on this next week when I speak to you on Thursday, and I'll have a week or about 6 days to figure out what the effect of that has been. But the ADP was expected to be minus 175,000 jobs, and it was only minus 27,000. And yes, that's still a staggering number, but again, it's much better than what was expected. The key in this, if you don't remember anything else about tonight's broadcast, is a lot of this economic data is not as bad as what it was expected to be. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, Jay Powell, while not really being in sync with the president most of the time he's been in office, definitely has said we will do whatever it takes to keep this economy from crumbling. And the U.S. is now promising billions of dollars in payroll support. Literally just 2 hours ago, Steve Mnuchin and President Trump and Mike Pence stood up there, Vice President Pence, saying we are going to protect employers so they can protect their employees. So part of what I'm trying to do is make sure you've heard this news so that it's a calming effect. Yes, this is very bad, but this government has the ability to stand in the gap and help America, and they're doing it, and that's a great thing. So many people are telling me or calling me and saying, how does this compare to the Great Depression? Well, it doesn't. Like any other major trajectory change in America, this is unique. It's unique because it has nothing to do with finances. In fact, it happened at a time when we were financially strong as Americans. Thank God it did, because can you imagine if this had hit when we were in the middle of a deep recession? It might put us into a recession. In fact, it will put us into a recession, but it could have put us into a depression had we not been strong when this first hit us. So that was a huge blessing. I think this time is going to be looked back on by historians, and they're going to be writing about it. It's going to be in the history books, just like 9/11, just like the stock market crash of '87. This one even more so, because I would argue that the effects have been more pervasive than even 9/11. Okay, I'm expecting the market to hit its low when we know that the number of active cases hits the peak and then begins to decline. Okay? All right, that's the first two sections. Any questions? Any questions at all? Let me send you the next poll question because this is on the investment programs. I haven't specifically addressed this in the past, but that's the feedback I got from the first three of these videos, that you guys wanted to hear what we're doing, how I'm investing. So that's what we're going to do. What is your interest in how CB3 invests? If you're a client, that's great. I get it. If you are just interested to see how another portfolio manager is working, that's fine too. Okay. But go ahead and answer. Appreciate that. Let's see. Show the results. Okay. I think I'll reopen it just in case more people want to answer there. So I'm just going to move ahead now with just 4 investments we've made. So Johnson & Johnson, they have, and these next 2 companies are companies we've owned on and off over the years, but we bought Johnson & Johnson last month because we like their announcement that they are a leading candidate, okay, in fighting with their vaccine. We're not positive it's going to happen, but we think that there's a really good chance of it. We also bought Abbott Labs last month. They have a test for the coronavirus. You've probably heard about this, delivering results in as little as 5 minutes and negative results in 13 minutes. That's interesting. I guess for the negative results, they test, the test process loops around a couple more times just to make sure that the person is negative. But obviously, when we first started this in early February, the testing process, which was this Q-tip that went way up your nose, and it was very uncomfortable and took 2 days. In fact, my son-in-law was tested. He works for the government, and it took him, I think, 2 or 3 days to get tests. So now a 5 to 13-minute test is really a move forward. So we did get into these last month. And in the more discretionary areas, we bought Zoom Video. So Zoom, as you may know, you're seeing their name everywhere, produces this conferencing software where people can get together, and it's kind of like Facebook Live, but it's really more a collaborative piece. And we believe that this is a fundamental trajectory change for how businesses and churches and other, board meetings happen. I mean, why would somebody have to fly in for a board meeting if people can successfully use this conference software? And they even have modules where you can buy, where you can see full projections, where literally you can be setting a table and eating with at the same time as someone else that's seated at a dining room table. It's pretty amazing what they're doing. And then we also bought Slack Technologies. So this is a company that essentially combines texting with emailing with sort of an Evernote function. So where you can have all of that put into one function and not have to send constant emails, but it's just basically connectivity for large businesses or even mid-sized businesses. In fact, we used it when I had a larger company than I do right now, and we used it very successfully. So those are the 4 companies that we bought last month. Again, if you're a client, you're probably going to be interested in that. If you're not, you just want to see what we're doing, that's fine. I'll give you the ticker symbols if you want to jot them down. Johnson & Johnson is JNJ. That's Juliet, November, Juliet. Abbott Labs, ABT, Alpha, Bravo, Tango. Zoom Video is ZM, so that's Zulu Mike. And then Slack Technologies, their ticker is actually WORK, which is kind of clever. That's Whiskey Oscar Romeo Kilo on the ticker symbol. Okay, I'll stop there. Any questions? Any questions at all on this third segment? All right. So here's the next poll. Have some fun with this. What is the most search item on Google? Is it buying groceries online? Is it disposable gloves? Is it toilet paper? Or is it hand sanitizer? What do you think? What do you think? Hope you guys can hear me okay tonight. I got a little different microphone setting too, so I'm waiting to see some results here. Anybody? What is the most searched item? Okay. Keep voting. Anybody else? Okay, well, you ready? It's not disposable gloves. It is, in fact, toilet paper. 753% rise in searches in the month of March over the month of February. I think that's pretty wild, pretty crazy. So this fourth module is in progress ideas, okay? Welcome, Tommy, I see you there. Food. Yeah, you know, food was down like fifth or sixth, so buy groceries online was the number 4. Pasta was number 5. And here it is for number 6. You ready? Beer delivery. Hi, Mike. I see you joined. Welcome. So, you know, if any of you guys are joining late, you can hit rewind, or this goes live about 15 minutes after I stop, and you can watch the whole presentation again, okay? So what I do is, I have a source that lets me see what searches are, what searches are the most popular. That's why I came up with this little quiz on Google and actually other search engines overseas. And what I found is that intent is the best predictor of a buyer's future actions. Let me say that again, that internet searches mean that intent is the best predictor of a buyer's actions. So when we see people searching things, we have an idea that they're getting ready to buy. And of course, if enough people are getting ready to buy something, we want to be online with that, so to speak. So one of the companies we're looking at is PTON, or Peloton Fitness. They have interactive videos for home training. Now, I mentioned this to my personal trainer today, who, by the way, is keeping me fit and keeping me healthy. So, yeah, really glad for that. But for people that are just getting into this and wanting to, you know, step out and, you know, give this fitness thing a chance before they hire a personal trainer, Peloton gives you the opportunity to watch videos, train at home, put headphones on. So in this era of social distancing, we see that people may take that route and cancel their memberships or postpone their memberships at Planet Fitness and other places. Thanks for the feedback, Mike. Been using Zoom for 3 years working remotely, and it's a great application. Yeah, no kidding. We use that as well, not for this, but we do use it. So, okay. Let's see what else we have. So Instacart is still private, but Instacart, as everyone knows now, is an aggregator. An aggregator means put things together for local grocery stores. So just 6 to 8 weeks ago, my wife and I were using a service through Jewel called Peapod. But Peapod basically had to pack up and go to the East Coast, which is the only place that they've got much business, because Instacart moved in and now aggregates, I think, 6 or 8, everything from CVS to Jewel to Pete's. For those of you that are here in Chicago, and those of you that are using Instacart in other markets, I would be interested in how many aggregate grocery delivery stores like Sam's, as I said, Walgreens, CVS, that you can get through Instacart. They're still private, but we will be watching because we know that it will be a highly anticipated IPO. And the other one that's still private is DoorDash. You know, DoorDash for the other part of the home delivery. One is groceries delivered in and items to prepare your food. And DoorDash is to bring ready-made carry-out. So that's my last question here, all right? Do you feel safe ordering carry-out food? Do you feel safe ordering carry-out food? We have a split verdict in our house. I think it's fine. The research that I've done is, unless they're just maliciously trying to hurt you, I think probably carry-out's fine. We have them deliver it. They're wearing gloves. We're wearing gloves. We take it out of the bag and boxes and put it on a plate, carry it in our home, and leave the bags and everything outside. But let me know what you think. Are you okay with it? Is it maybe if you know the restaurant real well, or are you just basically preparing all your food at home? Real interested to know on that. So, I see Thomas. No way. Okay, I get it. You must have voted. Thanks for the feedback. So, anyway, that's what I'm looking at this week. And, of course, this will change every week. And, restaurants with any strong delivery. So, obviously, you can get straight delivery with Chipotle. We've used them a couple times. You can get McDonald's delivered if you want. And I think they're in a partnership with Uber, so they don't have their own drivers. And, of course, Domino's forever has been that. But, Domino's reported that they actually saw a drop-off because with schools, I guess one of their big client bases was schools and hospitals and, probably meetings for, civic organizations and whatever. But their delivery request has been, tapered off. And maybe it's because a pizza is something that's shared. Many of these other services are food that's just, for one person, one individual meal. So maybe this whole concept of saving, or should I say splitting meals, is moving out of favor. And those are the kind of trends that we're following here at CB3. Hi, Melissa. There you go. Guys, it's an interesting time. People have said to me, well, this is going to be over in a few years, right? Oh, even Krispy Kremes. Hi, Nellie. Thanks for saying that. Even Krispy Kreme delivers. I think all these companies are going to have to deliver because people say to me, well, this is going to be just 2 or 3 months and we're going to go back to normal. So I didn't put this as a question, but I'm going to ask you guys this. How many of you remember exactly where you were when you saw that second plane fly in to the tower in New York? I do. I was sitting in front of my trading screens and all the data stopped like 8 minutes later. And it forever changed America. And if we were to hear right now of a plane that flew into a building, those of us that are old enough to remember that are pretty much going to immediately go back to that moment, which is now 19 years ago. Almost 19 years ago. So this memory of what happened right now is going to be with us for some time. So as an asset manager, a portfolio manager, we realize this changes everything about how we manage risk for our clients' portfolios. It's probably going to keep me in the business longer because not only do I have what I do, but we feel an obligation to our clients. We need to be better prepared for this, all of us, in the medical community, in the economic community, in the portfolio management community, that at any moment a pandemic like this could hit and could have this kind of repercussion. Now, we're hopeful that our health organizations in America are going to put us in a position like the TSA has, where we're not scared to fly. Yes, it's a hassle. I was saying to a client today, he said, I used to, I pick up my grandmother at the airport and I could go to the terminal and I could, see her there as she got off the plane. Well, those days are gone. But what we have in exchange is you can still do the same thing in baggage claim, and it's now much safer. So some of our lifestyles are going to change. Some of our behaviors, some of the way we have meetings, some of the way we have concerts. I said to you guys last week, as a musician, I'm kind of concerned about how concerts are. But life's going to change, and our goal as your portfolio manager is to figure out how that's going to affect, the commerce of the investments that we have. And some are going to be winners and some are going to be losers. So let's see. What else do I have here? Oh, I got some more questions. Guys, I'm sorry. So I'll quit talking here and let me tell. You don't know if that driver, oops, I got a lot of questions all of a sudden. So wash their hands, change their gloves, or any type of hygiene. And that's true. Melissa, you're absolutely true. You're absolutely right. The fact is that 6 weeks ago or 6 months ago, we didn't know that either. I think there's a certain level of trust that we have in the past embraced, which we might not be doing now. Share a pizza. Thank you, Bob. Good to have you join us. Domino's here is advertising 5 new drivers. Not sure if this is for future business. Probably to meet the demand today. Thanks, Chris, for joining. You say you remember vividly. Wow, Mark, thanks for joining us. And you said you were on a plane to Dallas. Man alive. That's intense. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. And Mike, in your bedroom sophomore year of high school. Wow, I was a lot older than that, but yeah. Thank you, buddy, for saying that. I think the U.S. will do a better job not sending manufacturing of many things overseas. Absolutely, Nellie. I mentioned that earlier, that what has happened here, I believe, is going to create a nationalistic tone that's going to make it so that people realize we don't want to be dependent on other countries. The truth is that the GDP in this country, 17% of GDP is reliant on imports, whereas China, 68%, that's more than 2/3, is reliant on exports. Okay, that's why these trade deals happened and why we used them to our advantage. And President Trump, like him or not, was able to gain leverage because we don't need these other countries as much as they need us. They need us to export to us because we are huge consumers. We're the biggest consuming economy in the world. But the dependency of medical devices, when you have to send the New England Patriots jet to pick up N95 mask, that is crazy. If anybody else thinks that, please be sure and tell them. So Keith, thank you. Death is 5,000. And you know what? I might have said 20. I got a lot of data here. If we're only at 5,000 deaths, that's awesome. Thanks for correcting me, Keith. I think the operative number is that Dr. Fauci is predicting between 100 and 250,000 deaths. I don't know how we get there by April 16th, frankly, if that's going to be the peak. Now, maybe they're taking that number and extrapolating it all the way out to the end of the year. I don't know when they, count the end of this endemic. So, Melissa, yes, exactly. We would trust in the past. Now we don't. I think that's absolutely. Andre, I was in college on 9/11 watching TV, wondered what the movie was. Yeah, I bet. But it wasn't a movie. It was real. Thank you, Andre. I hope I got that pronounced correctly. And Keith, you were in the Eurodollar pit, and you saw it all grind to a halt, didn't you? Yeah, I was behind my trading screens, but it was very eerie for those of us in the market. Let me just give you a little summary, and then we'll answer, the last questions. I'm going to show these results of, it's about equally split on the ordering food, so about a third each. But here's my last question for you guys. What would be most helpful for you, okay? I've done 4 topics tonight. Corona America, I call it, U.S. economic data, our current investments, in other words, what we've done over the last week, and we may not do anything next week, you don't know. And then what we're looking at in the way of ideas. If you're a client, that means what I'm looking at for your portfolio. If you're an investor, it just means, you might pick up a few ideas here. Who knows? So, Nellie, thanks, should be wearing a mask. I wore a mask for the first time yesterday when I went out. And I'll tell you this story. It was a ghost town in Glen Ellen. I live in a suburb just outside of Chicago. Hardly anybody out. I walked into my favorite chocolate shop, and you would have thought I was their long-lost uncle. Their eyes almost got misty because they had no other customers that day, and it was 2 p.m. and I picked out the chocolate that I wanted, which was behind a glass. They had gloves on. They picked it up with a device, put it into a bag, which was they were holding with a device. They asked me to take my credit card and swipe it. Then I sprayed the card. They gave me a paper towel to spray off, to dry the card. And then they handed me the bag, which they said, you're going to need to fold it over the top. So that's how we're living here. I mean, this is our new reality. I don't know how long we're going to be doing this, but it's going to be a while. So I think these changes are going to be pretty widespread. We're going to see touchless delivery, kind of like what we did in the chocolate shop, but on a bigger scale, where you don't have time for something, where it's dropped off and it's, you check it in on a cell phone. There's going to be people coming up with this, kind of technology. Temperature checks at retail stores. Temperature checks at concerts for $99. I haven't bought one yet because I still have the one where you have to put it on your forehead or in your ear. But a little device checks your temperature. I'm checking my temperature every day. Frankly, if I'm going to a concert, I don't want anybody sitting next to me that's got 102 fever, not even 100. And, they'll go beep on your ticket stub and beep on your head. And if either one doesn't work, they're going to send you over here to where they'll test you, more vigorously. And if you're 103, I think the police are going to, take you to the nearest ER. Not that you're under arrest, but we let sick people into environments where there's just a ton of people. Okay, it's going to affect retail stores, concerts, restaurants, nightly sanitation at essential businesses, and we're watching for these trends. It's a slowly developing thing, and it's going to be over years that this happens. But candidly, as an investment guy, it's kind of exciting. I don't want to sound like I'm being, insensitive to the tragedy, but definitely agree with you on the mask. Yes, Thomas, new opportunities, love it. I have no masks at home. Yeah, Mark. Candidly, I placed an order some time back on Amazon. We had one N95 from a hospital stay, and we've been using that and recycling it, just like all the doctors across America. I had this thought a few weeks ago that a lot of people and businesses will realize how much work can be done remotely, and there will be probably more of that. Yeah, Andre, thank you for saying that. I think the work culture in America has irrevocably changed, at least for the short term. And by the short term, I mean 2 to 3 years, not 2 to 3 months. I would not want to be, in a real estate investment trust where, your primary job is waking up every day and trying to find businesses that want to rent, 15 floors in downtown Chicago or Oak Brook or, other big suburbs in Chicago or Atlanta or St. Louis, wherever you guys are calling from. Yeah, for sure. So I agree with you, Andre, and I see Tom does as well. I think you're going to see an expansion of health clinics, in-home physician services, and even social distance compliant daycare. Now imagine that. I have one daughter who provides full-time nannies, and she's saying this is definitely going to change her business, and another daughter who uses full-time daycare because she's a teacher in the Baltimore school system of all places. So it's just going to change, and there's going to be some entrepreneurial bent that's going to rise to the occasion for each one of these demands. And again, as a portfolio manager, that's what we're here to do, is figure out where those trends are. So I'm going to leave you with this. The health of Americans and the U.S. economy are inextricably linked. They're joined at the hip. Joined at the hip. So the necessary public health decisions that are being made to protect literally the human race in North America, they're going to result in dire and dismal economic numbers. I've given you some of them tonight. There's still more to come. But what encouraged me today is even with this terrible number that came out in the weekly unemployment, and again, the huge number is tomorrow. And probably the huger, which is not a word, but the more huge number is when we get to April payrolls, which will be the first Friday in May. And we'll be here for you every Thursday, lining this up so you can see how this develops, where we're seeing, the new opportunities, okay? But as I've said each time, this is my 4th episode, it is my deeply held belief that we are America. and we will not only survive this pandemic, but we will thrive. Yes, there will be thousands of loss of life, and even one life is too many. But we can't control that. What we can control is to be looking out for you guys, and that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. So I'm looking at the poll. It looks mostly overall stock market and new investments. Okay, so I'll maybe taper off a little bit on the coronavirus. You can get that information elsewhere. And any of our recent investments, maybe, good job. I don't know. Hey, thanks, Keith. Appreciate that, buddy. Been seeing a lot of business in real estate. This is from Andrea. Closing lately. Yeah, just what I was saying, Andre. They're going to have to adapt. I mean, real estate's not going anywhere, but how it is filled, how it is leased out. Shorter term, maybe there'll be, my daughter actually has an office in Boston where she shares the space with a bunch of other people. You have a private office for some of the month, but most of the year out in an open area. There will be more of those kinds of spaces. And I think people are finding out. I mean, the news organizations, Bloomberg is running with like 70% of its reporters working out of their homes. I don't think we've ever had this kind of situation before. So thanks, Bob, for the well said. Mike, hey, thanks for the optimism, buddy. I appreciate you saying that. So listen, guys, thank you. Here's the results of the poll there. And, if you guys have any feedback on what you'd like to see other than the 4 choices that I gave you, just let me know. Shoot me an email at cb3@cb3.com. Because I didn't have slides for you tonight, if you want to see the slides that I used, just shoot me an email, cb3@cb3.com. That's Charlie Bravo, number 3 at charliebravo3.com. I'll send you the slides right out. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not trying to sell you anything, okay? I'm not a broker. I'm an economist and an advisor. So, and if you would please, if you'd like our page, click that little like button and tell your friends and family. We're going to be here every Thursday. I thought this was going to go on for, maybe a month or 2, but everything that I'm seeing is we're going to need to be here for a while. So, guys, any last questions? Rex, hey, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for your kind words. And Andre, yeah, I see about the virtual closings changes. Yeah, appreciate that. And yeah, don't know about that house, Mike. Wishing you the best. I don't think domestic real estate is going to be as hit as commercial real estate. That's just my take on this right now. People still need to live somewhere. So, Karen, I see you online. Thanks. So that's episode 4. Really appreciate you guys being here. We're here to serve you. If you've got any questions, shoot me an email, cb3@cb3.com. We'll be back here next week. And, God bless you guys. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.